Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table. We're happy to have you here. A few days ago, Melissa and I were on our way home from Florida. We had been to the wedding of a friend, and we stopped at a place called Clanton, Alabama. We went to a store there called Peach Park. Peach Park is amazing. Now, as you would expect, they have just about anything that you can imagine that's related to peaches. But they had all kinds of other things too. Lots of other fruits and vegetables. They had all kinds of sauces and dips and dressings and jams and jellies, just about anything you could imagine. They also had a little store where they did fried peach pies and other baked goods. So we could not come home without a basket of peaches. So we got home and I said, we need to do something with some of these peaches. So today we're going to do a Subscriber Sunday recipe that was sent to us from Robin Sherrill of Gastonia, North Carolina, and it is for her mother's peach pie. Now this is not a baked peach pie like you would think of with a top crust and you make the filling, put the top crust on and bake it. This is more of a summer peach pie. It sounds delicious to me. I've never made it before, but it sounds really good. And you know, it is still summer. It's not even the middle of August yet. I don't know about where you are, but where we live, school has not even started. So I think this will be a really good pie recipe for us to use today. Let's talk about what we're going to use to make Robin's mother's peach pie. We're going to start with 3/4 cup of sugar. Now that's a half cup and a 1/4 cup. Half and 1/4 make 3/4 of a cup. We're going to use 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Also, 1 cup of water and a 3-ounce box of peach jello. Then, of course, if you're going to have a peach pie, you need peaches. Now, Robin's recipe says 2 cups of sliced peaches. I may try to stretch it and put just a little more than 2 cups because I like my peach pie full of peaches. So we'll see. I'll start with 2 cups. If I need a little extra, I might throw some in. And then, of course, you need a crust. Now, I'm going to read to you what Robin's recipe says, and then we're going to talk about the crust. She said, "Mother used to make this peach pie. It is so good with fresh peaches. I made it yesterday, and it is still so good. I used a shortbread crust, but they're very hard to find. A frozen crust will work too. Mom got this recipe from Southern Living magazine back in the 1970s. I used to love when she made it." She goes on to talk about our other recipes and things that she has used, and we do appreciate that, Robin. Let's talk about the crust for a minute. Robin said that she used a shortbread crust, and you certainly can do that. A shortbread crust is going to be found in your grocery store in the baking aisle where you find graham cracker crust. And she's right, you can't always find them. We can usually find them, but not always. But if you want to try it with a shortbread crust, you can find those if they're available in the baking aisle. She also said you could use a frozen crust, and you certainly can do that. Just go to the frozen food section of your grocery store, get a frozen crust, let it thaw before you use it. You don't have to do anything else to it. Just take the wrapping off and put your peach filling into your crust. But I decided just to make a crust for ours because I really do like this kind of a crust with peach pie. So ours is just a regular crust. I actually used a Great Value boxed crust that I just unrolled. I used a rolling pin to roll it out a little bit larger and form it in our pan. And it has been blind baked. Blind baked means you bake it unfilled. You put it in your pan, you use some kind of weight, like pie weights, or I use pinto beans. I line my crust with a piece of parchment paper, put my pinto beans in, fill it up, put it in the oven on 425 for about 15 minutes. I take it out, take the beans and the parchment paper out. I put an egg wash on the inside. And the reason I do that is that an egg wash kind of seals your crust and keeps that filling from making your crust soggy. So I just took an egg and a little bit of water or milk. You can use either one, just a splash. Beat that together and then brush it on the inside of your crust. Put it back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes. You'll have to watch it because when it starts to brown, you want to take it out. You may also want to cover the edges so the edge of the crust doesn't burn. Okay, so that's already ready, and you've seen me do that on other videos. So I went ahead actually and did that last night because it's really early in the morning here. It's about 7:30, 7:40 in the morning, and we're doing this early because this peach pie needs to sit in the refrigerator for a while to set up, and we have a really busy day today. So we're going to make this early this morning, let it sit all day, and then we will finish this video. We'll actually have the pie for dinner this evening. Okay, here's how we do this. We have to start by boiling our water. So I'm just going to put that in our saucepan, turn our heat on. I'm going to leave that on high and bring that to a boil. Now while that's happening, in a little bowl, I'm going to stir together my sugar. I want all that out there. My sugar and my cornstarch. And we want those combined so that cornstarch won't lump up when we put it in the hot water. And we need 3 tablespoons. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Pardon me for banging on the bowl, but I need that all out there. And then I'm just going to take my measuring spoon and stir that up well. I want that incorporated, that cornstarch incorporated with that sugar. That just helps it once it goes into that hot water. So I'm just going to mix that around. If I see any lumps, I'll just knock them out all over the counter. No, I do that sometimes, don't I?
Just trying not to laugh.
You might as well laugh, I do. You just want to make sure all those lumps are broken up. So just take the back of your spoon and kind of mash those into that sugar. Just make sure they're broken up. And when you can see that it's all mixed together, no more lumps, then you're finished. Okay, we're going to let our water come to a boil before we add in our sugar and cornstarch. Our water is boiling, so we're going to add in our sugar and cornstarch. And I'm just going to stir that in. Now, Robin's directions say to cook it and stir it for about 10 to 12 minutes until it thickens. I don't know why it would take that long. I'm going to use this to get those lumps out. Certainly don't want lumps in it. It says to cook over medium heat, so I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. And you just cook this until it is thickened and ready to use in your pie. Then we will add our gelatin. But this is going to take several minutes according to her recipe. So we're just going to let it cook and keep stirring and whisking. Well, I know that I said the recipe from Robin says to cook it 12 to 15 minutes. And this is cooked for about 5, but it is really thick. If I pull my whisk through it, it leaves a trail on the bottom of the pan. So I'm thinking that this is probably thickened enough. So I'm going to go ahead and put in our Jell-O powder, and it does say to remove it from the heat. So I'm just going to turn the heat off. I'm going to put in the Jell-O, peach Jell-O, and stir that in. And then it says that it has to cool to lukewarm or completely. So I'm going to transfer this from our saucepan. And by the way, you may have noticed that earlier I did switch saucepans because I decided after I started that water boiling that something non-stick probably would work better. So I did switch to this little non-stick pan. But I'm going to move this from this pan that I have it in to a bowl where it may cool a little quicker. All right, so we're just going to let this cool.
You turned your heat back on, right?
Yes, I did, because I'm going to let that cook for just a second while I'm getting a bowl.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yep. I'm just finishing up peeling my peaches. Our glaze has been sitting on the counter for about an hour, and it has cooled. It's at least lukewarm. It may be even cooler than that. So I am finishing up my peaches here. We will stir those into, or stir the glaze into our peaches. These peaches are beautiful. If you are anywhere near Clanton, Alabama, I highly recommend that you stop at Peach Park and grab some peaches. These are beautiful peaches. And Melissa and I've been, actually this is our second basket. We stopped and got a basket on our way to Florida, and we ate those while we were there. We had peaches for breakfast.
Every morning, they were so good.
Every morning. So on our way back, we decided to stop and get another basket of peaches. And I'm so glad we did. They are really nice peaches. Now, just to be transparent here, when we got them, they were not very soft. And I was a little worried about that first basket we got going down. But within one day, they really started to soften up, and I was a little worried with the first basket that they weren't ripe and wouldn't ripen, but they were. They just were what's called tree ripe, which means they're not fully soft. If they picked them when they were fully soft, they would be mush by the time they got them to us. So let me tell you, don't worry about that. They are wonderful peaches. Now, I did do 6 peaches for this pie, and they're pretty decent sized peaches. I kind of mixed them up. I used some that were really big, and I used a few that were a little smaller, but even the small ones are pretty good sized peaches. I want every bit of this glaze. I'm calling it a glaze. I don't know. It's not really like Jell-O, but I want every bit of this out of there. I will be the first to tell you that I am not a huge fan of fruit in Jell-O. Growing up, we had lime Jell-O with a drained can of fruit cocktail stirred into it quite often.
I can tell you were a fan.
I was not a fan. Lime Jell-O with fruit cocktail stirred into it. And I don't mind Jell-O at all.
See, I just associate it with being sick. I don't know. I guess that's what my mom fixed us when we were not feeling well. But
Well, probably because it had some flavor, but
Right.
it kept you hydrated.
I know, but that's what I
So-
still associate it with as an adult. So
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But I like Jell-O okay. I just don't like it with fruit stirred into it. So I was a little worried about this recipe, that this would be like Jell-O with fruit in it, but it's not at all. This is much more of a glaze than it is like Jell-O. So don't worry about that if you have an aversion to.
this reminds me of a strawberry pie with that glaze on it.
Yep, it sure does. And I'm just going to try to get those down in there the best I can, and then spoon this glaze right over it, the extra that I can scrape out of here. Because we want every speck of that on there, don't we? We don't want to waste any of that. Now, I'm going to use a couple forks to manipulate some of this fruit, because I want it to lay down in there and I want it to kind of nest together. I'll show you what I mean. Hey, we have thunder. I hear thunder in the distance. So like these pieces right here, I'm just going to kind of push those down in there, and I'm going to flip this over so it nests right against the edge of that crust. I just want those to fit down in there really well. Move this one over against the crust. Put that piece down in there. You don't have to do this, but I'm just a little particular about stuff like this. Okay, I think that looks really good. What do you think, Melissa?
I think it looks beautiful.
I do too. Man,
I can see why her mom made this often.
I can too, and this was so easy to make. It was very simple. Push that one right down in there. I want those touching so that they kind of, when this glaze sets up, I want everything to stick together. Okay, now, Robin's directions do say to top this with whipped topping, like Cool Whip. I think you could also do it with ice cream. I think that would be delicious too. But, you know, that's just me. But I know that whipped topping, like Cool Whip, would be delicious on this. That would be very summery. Okay, we have a pie, and we're going into the refrigerator for several hours just to let it set up. Melissa and I have a really busy day today.
Which is why it's going to rain, of course. We
Of
have a lot
course.
to be out doing.
Of course. It's 9:13 in the morning. We won't get to cut this until this evening. We'll probably have a piece after dinner. So it's going to sit in the refrigerator for a while, but as soon as it's ready and we're finished with today's chores, we will come back and share a piece of pie with you.